Welcome to the Philosophy of Today. I'm Jim Hammond. The philosophy of today is a fundamental shift of worldview, what I would call a watershed, the first watershed since the time of Isaac Newton, so that's about 400 years. When we say a shift of worldview, we mean that we see the world as an organism instead of a mechanism. We see the world as interconnected instead of separate pieces. We have more respect for the unconscious than for reason. In all these respects, I would say the philosophy of today is a watershed, a fundamental shift of worldview. However, we need to distinguish watershed from Renaissance. I think that our time is both a watershed and a Renaissance, but a watershed is a change of worldview. It's a change in conscious thinking. It's not about instincts or the unconscious. Renaissance and decadence are about instincts. It's an unconscious thing as opposed to a worldview or conscious thoughts. So a watershed can happen anytime there's a shift of what might be called the intellectual view of the world, whereas Renaissance and decadence take place periodically without regard to conscious thinking. So I would say that a watershed is not a periodic phenomenon, whereas Renaissance and decadence are periodic. Renaissance and decadence are caused by the passage of time, whereas watershed is caused by a shift in philosophy and thinking. There has probably never been an era that was both a Renaissance and a watershed as our era is. Also, there's never been a Renaissance era that knew it was a Renaissance. So in that respect, our era is unique because we're both a Renaissance and a watershed, and furthermore, we understand that we are a Renaissance and we understand what a Renaissance is and what its causes are. So in all those respects, I think that our time is unique and perhaps the best time for philosophy. The scientist Edmund Halley discovered that the comet, known as Halley's Comet, arrived periodically, that you could predict a future arrival of the comet. That's kind of what I'm trying to do with Renaissance and decadence. I'm trying to figure out the period or the amount of time that elapses before another Renaissance. So I'm trying to do for culture what Halley did for comets. I'm trying to describe Renaissance and decadence as periodic phenomena, not things that have a specific cause, not things that can happen at any time. So my theory of history is based on life and death instincts, which in turn comes from Freud. Freud developed the theory of life and death instincts. And he noticed that the instincts tend to go to an extreme and then bounce back in the other direction. Just as I've said that decadence reaches an extreme and then bounces back to create a Renaissance. Freud said one group of instincts rushes forward so as to reach the final aim of life as swiftly as possible. But when a particular stage in the advance has been reached, the other group jerks back to a certain point to make a fresh start and so prolong the journey. So you have what might be called a dialectic, a reaching an extreme and then bouncing back in the other direction. This is what Freud noticed in all instincts, in the life and death instincts in particular, and this is what I've noticed in Renaissance and decadence, which I view as life and death instincts in society. So I equate the life instinct in society with a Renaissance and the death instinct in society with a decadent period. So the theory of Renaissance and decadence is my most original theory, and it talks about a flowering of the arts and a decline of the arts. Renaissance, obviously, is the flowering of the arts, and decadence, the decline of the arts. But my theory is also relevant to philosophy because it says that certain philosophers and theories and values are decadent and other philosophers' theories and values are Renaissance type. So this allows my theory to have a relevance for philosophy as well as for the arts. But I don't think my theory applies to science. In other words, my theory doesn't say that Isaac Newton is Renaissance type or decadent. It doesn't say that Einstein is Renaissance type or decadent, etc. So it doesn't relate to scientists or scientific theories. So my theory of the life and death instincts of societies is based on something invisible. People can't see the life and death instincts. They can't touch them or count them. They're invisible, like Schopenhauer's will. A lot of philosophical ideas are based on something that's intangible and invisible. I would say philosophy is about spirit. It's about the invisible world. It's about mystery. The ancient Greeks and Romans talked about 4 basic elements: earth, air, fire, and water. So they believed in 4 elements. And then they realized that there was some intangible thing in addition to these 4 elements, something invisible, a spark of life, so to speak. And they called this the quinta essentia, or the 5th essence, which gives us the English word quintessence. So this is the mysterious, the invisible, the intangible element in the world. And I think this is what philosophy often deals with. My theory of history is what might be called a double mysticism, because it's based on the life and death instincts, which belong to individuals, and that's invisible and intangible. And it's also based on the notion that these instincts are shared in a society, so that a society has a shared life instinct to create a Renaissance, or a shared death instinct to create a decadent period. So my theory stretches the concept of the organic by calling societies organic, just as the philosophy of today stretches the concept of organic by saying that everything is alive. I'd like to talk about Darwin's theory, the theory of evolution. His theory leaves out spirit. It leaves out this 5th essence. It leaves out what might be called the quintessence. His theory is based on 2 things. It's based on mutations and then natural selection. So mutations, or varieties, creates a lot of different organisms, and then selection picks out the ones that are advantageous for survival, and it kills off the ones that are disadvantageous. So Darwin's theory is based on mutations and then selection of the fittest. So the element of chance is very big in his theory, because it's chance that creates mutations, according to Darwin's theory. Genetic mutation is a matter of chance. Now, many philosophers have questioned Darwin's theory. They felt, for example, Nietzsche, they felt that they couldn't completely accept his theory because it's too passive. In other words, the random mutations don't give any space for the individual's drive, his urge, his energy. Mutation is a purely random process. And then natural selection is imposed by the environment. So again, it doesn't give much space for the individual's drive or urge or thrust. So a lot of philosophers have questioned Darwin's theory because they didn't feel that evolution could be such a passive process, that it could be simply a matter of random mutation and then selection. They felt there must be some sort of instinct or will, call it a life instinct, call it a life force. There must be some sort of engine or urge or will or instinct. Some driving force behind evolution. That's what a lot of philosophers have felt. So I think the philosophy of today will take a new look at Darwin's theory, and it will say that the role of chance is not as big as Darwin thought. There must be some sort of will or synchronicity in the process of evolution. One of Jung's disciples, Marie-Louise von Franz, said, "A species of animals under great pressure or in great need could produce meaningful but acausal changes in its outer material structure. So she's introducing a new element, what might be called synchronicity, to the process of evolution. She's not accepting the idea that mutation could be a purely random process. We talked before about how psychic phenomena are often based on excitement, and they often diminish in an atmosphere of boredom or routine. So here, von Franz is talking about a species that's under great pressure or in great need. So they're fighting for their life, so to speak, and they produce some sort of changes in their structure or in their body, perhaps even their genetic composition. Arthur Koestler, who was receptive to the occult, he was a novelist in the 20th century. He wrote a lot of books on various subjects. Koestler's work is often on the intersection of the occult and biology. So Koestler is talking about something similar to what von Franz is talking about, some sort of synchronistic element in the process of evolution, some sort of occult or psychic phenomenon in evolution. Now, if we see the occult in quantum physics, if we see things as interconnected and alive, if we see particles as having a kind of awareness or consciousness, then why can't we see the same things in biology? Why can't the same factors play a role in evolution? It seems to me that they not only can play a role, but they must play a role, because we've seen these factors throughout the universe. We've seen them in particles, in people, in novels, in all sorts of things. So it stands to reason that they also play a role in biology and evolution. So I would say that will or synchronicity plays a role in evolution, and it also plays a role in the initial creation of life. Where did that first spark of life come from when there was nothing but inanimate matter? Before there was any life, where did that first spark of life come from? I would argue that that first spark of life came partly from will and synchronicity, just as the process of evolution is partly a result of will and synchronicity. So I'm not questioning Darwin in the name of intelligent design. I'm questioning Darwin because I'm saying that nature itself is intelligent, matter is intelligent, the universe is intelligent. I'm not ascribing intelligence to a being outside the universe, but rather to the universe itself. If we believe in intelligent design, if we believe in an intelligent being, it raises all sorts of thorny questions, like why did God create so much empty space and unpeopled worlds? Why does God allow suffering? Why did God allow the Holocaust? Why did God create the world at all? So there's all sorts of difficult questions that arise if you posit intelligent design, if you posit an intelligent being. When John Adams, the second president, met the astronomer William Herschel, he asked him, if all the planets and stars are inhabited with intelligent beings, as you astronomers believe, did Jesus go to each star and die for their sins? So Adams was using astronomy as an argument against Christianity. The poet Coleridge asked, why did God make childbirth so painful for women and so dangerous? Many people died in childbirth at that time. There are many such questions, and they can never be satisfactorily answered. Why did God create the world as we know it? Why would an omniscient and omnipotent being who's benevolent create the world as we know it? The philosopher David Hume said that the existence of evil is an argument against religion. He said, if God exists and God is omnipotent and benevolent, then why is there evil and suffering in the world? Hume said, Epicurus's old questions are yet unanswered. Is he willing to prevent evil but not able? Then is he impotent. Is he able but not willing? Then is he malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Whence then is evil? So the origin of evil, according to Hume, is an insoluble question for people who believe in a monotheistic religion. And he felt that even in the days of Epicurus, these questions were posed and never satisfactorily answered. But if we let go of the idea of intelligent design or an intelligent being, if we let go of the idea of top-down intelligence, if we believe instead in an intelligent universe, if we believe in bottom-up intelligence, then these thorny questions don't arise. The universe has bottom-up intelligence. It has the sort of intelligence that particles possess, the particles that we discussed in connection with quantum physics, the particles that we saw in the paired particles experiment and the double slit experiment. We don't hold these particles responsible for creating the world. We don't ask these particles, why did you permit the Holocaust? Why does evil exist? Why is childbirth painful? These particles have a kind of awareness or consciousness or intelligence, but it's not rational thinking, it's not architect thinking, and therefore we don't hold them responsible for the nature of the world, and we don't have to grapple with these difficult questions that philosophers have previously grappled with. So according to the philosophy of today, the world arose spontaneously. There's no architect, no designer, no creator. The world arose as a plant grows, as a flower blooms. So we accept it as it is. We don't hold anyone responsible for it. We don't ask anyone, why did you make the world in this way? Why does evil exist? Why is childbirth painful, etc., etc. We mentioned before the basic principle of the Hermetic worldview is as above, so below. All levels of being have the same character or nature. The bottom level, particles, the middle level, people, animals, etc., the highest level, stars, planets, etc., they all have the same character or nature. So if we discover a law of being that applies on Earth, it probably applies elsewhere. If we believe, for example, that everything is connected and everything is alive, these principles are probably true throughout the universe. If synchronicity applies on Earth, it probably applies throughout the universe. Synchronicity isn't just a human trait, it's a trait of the universe. So if there's life elsewhere in the universe, extraterrestrial life, then it must have synchronicity just as the Earth does. The laws of being, such as everything is connected and everything is alive, must prevail on any planet. So a science fiction writer can estimate the nature of extraterrestrial life based on earthly life. I'm not suggesting that extraterrestrial life exists, and I'm not expressing any opinion about the probability of extraterrestrial life. I'm simply saying that if we want to speculate in that way, there is a basis for these speculations in our earthly being. Let's look at an episode from the life of Winston Churchill. During the Boer War around 1902, Churchill was landed in a Boer prison. He escaped from the prison and he found himself in enemy territory. He's making his way through enemy territory. He has to knock on somebody's door. Among hundreds of houses, there's probably only one that's sympathetic to the English, because he was in an area that's enemy territory. It's predominantly sympathetic to the Boers. So he happened to knock on the one door that was sympathetic to the English, and that allowed him to get help and to escape from the enemy territory. So why did he knock on that one door? I would say it's not a process of rational thinking. It's not a process of reasoning. It's not simply a matter of chance. There's something going on there, something that led him to that one door. Just as if an animal has a genetic mutation that helps it to survive, it's probably not pure chance. There's something going on there, some sort of fate, some sort of synchronicity. Certainly Churchill, when he's running for his life, he's in a very excited state. He's not bored in any way. So this is the kind of mental state that produces psychic phenomena, such as synchronicity. Or let's look at another person who is escaped from prison, running for his life, a man named Dengler. He was born in Germany at the time when the World War II was just ending. He made his way to the United States. He was determined to fly. He wanted to learn how to fly, and he joined the United States Armed Services at around 1962, and he became a pilot. He was flying in Vietnam. He was shot down over Vietnam. He was captured. He managed to escape from prison, and as he's running from the North Vietnamese, his father appears and points the way to safety. Dengler was at like a fork in the road, and his father was pointing the way to safety. His father had already died, so he's seeing a vision of his father. Now, is this an example of life after death, or is this an example of Dengler's own unconscious producing some sort of image that helps him? Is this mind over matter, or is this life after death? It's difficult to distinguish between different types of the occult, but again, you have a psychic phenomenon that emerges from a very excited state of mind. Here's a person running for his life. He's certainly not bored. He's extremely charged up, and this is where psychic phenomena often occur. So one of the basic principles of the occult is mind over matter, mind over circumstances, mind over randomness. If there's some sort of will or urge or instinct or synchronicity, this could impact what Darwin thought was a purely random process of mutation. Now, mind over matter is also the basic principle of self-help literature, inspirational literature. This kind of literature says, set goals, focus your mind, keep a positive attitude. Circumstances will cooperate with you, and you'll attain your goal. One of the pioneers of self-help literature, James Allen, said, a man should conceive of a legitimate purpose in his heart and set out to accomplish it. He should make this purpose the centralizing point of his thoughts. It may take the form of a spiritual ideal, or it may be a worldly object according to his nature at the time being. Whatever it is, he should steadily focus his thought forces upon the object which he has set before him. So the philosophy of today respects self-help literature, inspirational literature. It believes that this kind of literature is based on a profound truth, namely mind over matter. The mind can accomplish things in the external world. The mind can bend circumstances. As positive thoughts bring about positive circumstances, so negative thoughts bring about negative circumstances. The mind can produce the positive or produce the negative. A good example of negative thinking bringing about negative circumstances is Hamlet. Hamlet, in the beginning of the play particularly, has a negative attitude toward life, toward people, toward everything. And his negative thinking produces negative effects. It produces a pile of corpses. The play ends with a pile of corpses. And it was the critic Wilson Knight, whom we discussed earlier, that said it's Hamlet's negative thinking that produces negative circumstances. As one alchemist put it, the mind can bring about many things of the utmost profundity outside the body. So this is a basic principle of the occult. It's a basic principle of self-help literature and inspirational literature. Rick Pitino was the coach of the Boston Celtics for a while, and he had trouble at the Celtics. So he quit the Celtics, and he was sitting one day with his friend, I think it's Ralph Willard, And they were saying, where could I start coaching? What team could I coach? I used to coach at Kentucky, which is the best program in college basketball. So where could I go? And at that moment, a cardinal landed on the table that they were sitting at. And they both knew that this was a special moment, a synchronicity, so to speak. And they said, that's it, I can coach the Louisville Cardinals, which he ended up doing. So this is an example of what might be called synchronicity. Now, some people would say that this is God's way of communicating with man, that this is an indication of an intelligent being. And what I would say is it's an indication of an intelligent universe, intelligent nature. By the way, if you want to give any feedback on the show, we have an email address, which is today@ljhammond.com, and there's a website, ljhammond.com/today. If you go to that website, you'll get more information about the people that we're discussing. So that's all for today, and thank you for watching.